words. Anyway, yes. So it's important to remember that weight is messing with the plot. I think it's really unfortunate no one has done another. And you can tell if you know French at all when you're reading his translations. You can kind of tell what he's doing because he's doing a bit of a one-to-one. It's more like the French grammar in the English words, which kind of makes it really clunky and it's sometimes hard to read. But that's not Levi's writing. That's Waite's translation. This is something to bear in mind when reading this stuff, because when you read Crowley's translation of Waite, it's a lot clearer. And I don't think that Crowley had necessarily the best knowledge of French. Anyway, yes. My point is that the great secret, as Levi calls it, is sort of the power that activates these tools and gives them life, as it were. Now, to use this great secret and really establish this idea of virtue and ethics, it sort of comes down to one's ideas about good and evil. And as some people might know, this is like my favorite subject ever. Levi's idea of evil very much prefigures Crowley's idea of evil in the sense, which is interesting because people think of Crowley as very anti-Christian, but he evolves the Catholic idea of evil. But in actuality, if you analyze it, it's not really that different. Levi really buys into Aquinas' definition of evil as the outer darkness, or just distance from God. He does not consider evil to be a force in and of itself. It's sort of a negative action, if what I'm saying makes sense. It's not. There is no God, and there's no God and the devil per se. Although Levi does definitely believe in the devil as a thing, but the devil is just the personification of the distancing from God, or the distancing from holiness. He calls it the outer darkness. The best word that I could possibly come up with to define this idea of evil is parody. And that's sort of the ultimate evil. When Crowley talks about evil, he says, well, essentially it's circumstantial, and he's right to a certain extent, that a scuba suit, in his example, is good in the water, evil in the desert, because it's useful in one place and not useful in the other. And this is one thing, but I mean, in the more mystical sense, the best word to describe evil would be parody. It puts on the face of good, and it looks like something good, but it actually circumvents all of the principles that it's supposedly founded on. And Levi was very strongly critical of the Catholic Church at that time as being, in a sense, a parody of what it should have been, simply because of the and given the scandals that have happened with the church in recent memory, certainly since the 80s, we can see that. And I have said this many times myself, I don't care whose face you put on the wall. If you are teaching people to hate one another and to be xenophobic and to be nasty, then it is a satanic church. I don't care if Jesus is up there. It's not, you're not following the principles of Jesus. This comes up, again, very strongly in Crowley's work. And Levi says outright that he considers evil to be parody. And at kind of the end of Liber 418, after Crowley's been initiated through the Enochian Aethers, he sees what he calls the four great devils, which are the gods worshipped by men, and he says that Satan is a parody of, Satan is worshipped under the name of Jesus, that Belial is worshipped under the name of Buddha, that Leviathan is worshipped under the name of Muhammad or Allah, and Lucifer is worshipped under the name of Brahman. And this is basically these are the parodies of the religion. They don't have any positive existence in and of themselves, but they represent people using religion to control people, using religion as an abusive sort of thing. And this is one of the things that makes a lot of people, particularly people who are in the occult community and come to things like this, very critical of different religious traditions, which is unfortunate because I think that these traditions have a lot to offer us in terms of what I was talking about before about packing life with meaning. Not just life, but objects and stuff like that. To pack everything with meaning, one lives a more rich and full life. Whereas when someone just completely discards all that, then life is very shallow and dank. And this is kind of the goal of the four great devils, is to make us nihilistic, to take the meaning out of our lives. And they do this by using religion as a stick to beat us with, so that we are resentful towards it and not interested in engaging in it seriously. I was going somewhere with this. The great metaphor that Levi uses is, I'm quoting now, the atheists say that the world is nothing more than force and matter. One might as well say that books are just ink and paper. This is true, books are just ink and paper, but if you know how to read them, then they have a meaning for you and they communicate information to you and you get something out of them. Whereas if you, I would compare the staunch atheist to someone who just refuses to read, and to them a book is just ink and paper and they'll get nothing out of it. Yes, there was something else I wanted to say, and I will probably remember it in about 4 hours. Yes, so Levi tells one of the most, yes, okay, Key of the Mysteries, Biblical Interpretation. Doctrine and Ritual is sort of his how-to of magic, which, as I said, Crowley reflects. And I would very, very strongly recommend that when people are reading the Doctrine and Ritual Transcendental Magic, to balance it with Magic and Theory and Practice. Crowley actually writes a lot more. Crowley's more readable, I would say. This is interesting because a few people have cropped up lately saying that they're trying to write a book to really help explain how to explain Crowley's system of magic, which is ludicrous because Crowley already wrote a book explaining his system of magic, and it's actually very clear. It's really just these shysters trying to make a dime off explaining what he already very clearly explained. But they balance off each other. Levi's books are truly magical books in the sense that you can read them, and then you'll read some other stuff and look into them. And I have literally had this experience every time that I pick up one of his books where I'm reading through it and I read a page and it's like I swear this page wasn't there the last time I read it. I swear this, I would have noticed it if this was there before. But all it is when you get more understanding, what he's saying becomes increasingly clear, and he's very, very good like that. So in the book, the one that's not online, that you cannot actually download, which I know because I was trying to, when I do research for these things, I like to get PDFs just so that I can word search them and I don't have to actually look in books. It makes life easier. But I was trying to find History of Magic, which I believe they have here. But for some reason, what's that?
That's the book on the table.
Yeah, I know. It's because I broke my stand. I need to put on.
Oh, okay.
So it's interesting, and it gets very heavily criticized because it's not a lot. His historical talk is dubious. I would say that if Doctrine and Ritual is his instruction manual and Key of the Mysteries is his interpretation, this is in a way his mythology of magic. The stories he tells may be true, they may not be true. Sometimes he's talking about his contemporaries who are figures who you can look up and very clearly exist and know about that. And other times he just tells these sort of weird stories about people that may or may not have actually happened. And so that's the one that kind of gets chucked out because it's like, oh, this isn't real history. But it's like, it's not the point. It's not what he says in there, and he gives away more than, he gives it away under the guise of telling stories about history, when actually what he's trying to do is teach lessons. And he's very clear about that as a method of teaching. In Key of the Mysteries, one of the things he says, which I find is a very interesting statement coming from someone who's so committed to the Bible, is he says, anyone who takes the Bible literally is insane. Like, just flat out insane. It's like, what people have to understand is that when the ancients wanted to teach people a lesson, they would tell a story. And history